August 2024. The offices of the Special Commission for Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, CEFANI, in Mexico City. Carmen Gutierrez. Viuda de Méndez makes her way slowly through the corridors of the government building. In her wrinkled hands, she holds a cardboard box containing the last of her late husband's personal effects. 3 months have passed since Roberto's story shook the world. 3 months since the Mexican government was forced to publicly acknowledge the existence of anomalous aerial events at the country's most important airport. But what Carmen doesn't know is that her visit to these offices will trigger revelations that make the original case seem like merely the tip of an infinitely deeper and more disturbing iceberg. Señora Méndez, greets Dr. Enrique Vázquez Morales, the director of CEFANI. He is a man of 55, his face etched with the exhaustion of someone who has seen too much in too little time. I am so sorry for your loss. Roberto is a national hero. Carmen nods silently as she places the box on his desk. Roberto specifically asked me, if anything happened to him, to bring this here. He said you would know what to do with it. Inside the box are objects that seem mundane at first glance. An old scientific calculator, a worn-out astronomical map, a military compass, and most importantly, a manila envelope sealed with red wax. On the envelope, in Roberto's meticulous handwriting, are the words, "To be opened only after my death, the 7 remaining contacts." Dr. Vázquez opens the envelope with trembling hands. Inside, he finds 23 pages of documentation that Roberto had kept hidden, even during his final interviews with Maria Elena Gutierrez. The first page contains a declaration dated May 20th, 2024, barely a week before his death. If you are reading this, it means the device's prediction has finally come to pass. But there is something I could not reveal while I was alive, something that would have endangered not only my family, but potentially all of humanity. The incident of October 8, 1999 was not an isolated event. It was the first of 8 scheduled contacts. I have witnessed 7 more. The revelation strikes Dr. Vázquez like a physical blow. For the past 3 months, his commission had investigated the original case, assuming it was a singular event, extraordinary but limited in time. The possibility of multiple contacts, of a systematic program of approach, had never once been considered. Roberto had meticulously documented each of the 7 subsequent encounters. Second contact, October 8, 2000, first anniversary. Location, same runway, 05R, same exact time, 02:14:33. Roberto had returned to the airport that night not as an employee but as a civilian, parking on a nearby hill with binoculars. The object returned exactly 1 year later, landing in the same spot for precisely 8 minutes. This time, Roberto was able to photograph it with a Nikon F5 camera, equipped with a 400mm telephoto lens and high-sensitivity film. The photographs, which Dr. Vázquez now examines with a magnifying glass, show details that were not visible to the naked eye. The object was not completely solid. Parts of its structure appeared translucent, allowing the airport lights to be seen through them. More disturbingly, the photographs capture what appears to be a humanoid figure inside the object, visible in only 2 of the roll's 36 shots. Third contact, October 8, 2001. Location, runway 05R. But this time, Roberto was invited. The documentation of this encounter is the most detailed and unsettling. Roberto describes receiving a mental call at 02:02 hours, an irresistible compulsion to head to the airport. Perimeter security cameras, which the commission had managed to obtain through a court order, show Roberto walking toward the runway with strangely rigid movements as if being guided by an external force. I can't explain how I reached the runway without being detected by security, so he wrote. It was as if I were invisible to their systems. The object was waiting for me. A door opened without a sound, without any visible mechanism. I went inside. Roberto was inside the object for exactly 8 minutes. His descriptions of the interior defy comprehension. Spaces that seemed larger on the inside than the out, surfaces that responded to touch by changing texture, and most chillingly, screens that displayed images of future events with disturbing accuracy. They showed me Miguel's death. I saw exactly how he would lose control of his car, how the steering wheel would lock, how his eyes would fill with terror in the final seconds. They showed me the cancer that would kill me, growing in my pancreas like a dark stain. They showed me other things, things about the future of humanity that I cannot write down here. Fourth Contact, October 8th, 2002. Location: his own home. This encounter marks a dramatic escalation in the nature of the contacts. The object did not land at the airport but materialized in Roberto's backyard in Coyoacán. Carmen, his wife, was fast asleep and did not awaken. Even as Roberto described brilliant lights and low-frequency sounds that made the windows vibrate. This time I was not alone. There were 3 beings. I can't call them human, but they weren't entirely alien either. They stood about 1.8 meters tall with human proportions, but with features my mind refused to fully process, as if seeing their true forms was too much for my brain. They communicated with me telepathically, not in words, but in complete concepts, images, emotions. The beings explained to Roberto that he had been selected as a primary witness in a program of gradual acclimatization. Humanity was being prepared for a revelation that would fundamentally change its understanding of its place in the universe. Roberto was one of 144 witnesses distributed globally, each documenting similar contacts at specific times. Fifth Contact, October 8th, 2003. Location: Santa Lucia Military Base. Unauthorized access. The fifth encounter was the most audacious. The object materialized directly over the country's most secure military base. Roberto was again summoned mentally, this time driving to the military installation where, impossibly, he was able to enter without being detected by any security system. The object hovered 10 meters above the main military runway. The guards on duty were motionless like statues, their eyes open but clearly in some kind of suspended state. They couldn't see me. They couldn't see the object. It was as if we existed on a different frequency of reality. During this contact, the beings showed Roberto classified military technology from multiple countries, including American, Russian, and Chinese projects that would not be publicly revealed for decades. They explained that they monitored human technological development to ensure we did not reach a point of self-destruction before being ready for open contact. Sixth Contact, October 8th, 2004. Location: Earth orbit. The documentation for the sixth contact includes detailed drawings Roberto made immediately after the event. For the first time, he was taken outside the Earth's atmosphere. His descriptions of seeing the Earth from space are extraordinarily detailed for someone with no astronautical training. I saw the full curvature of the planet. The city lights looked like gigantic neural circuits. But I also saw things that shouldn't be there. Structures on the moon that don't appear in any public NASA photographs. Constructions on the far side that looked ancient, predating human civilization. The beings revealed that the moon was not entirely natural, but a partially artificial structure placed in orbit millennia ago by a previous civilization to monitor the development of life on Earth. Roberto saw direct evidence of subterranean lunar facilities that had been operational for at least 50 billion years. Seventh contact, October 8th, 2005. Location, multiple simultaneous. The penultimate documented contact was the most complex. Roberto experienced what he described as temporal multiplicity, existing simultaneously in multiple locations and times. I was in the airport control tower in 1999, but also in my house in 2005, and also in a place I didn't recognize, perhaps the future. I could see and interact with versions of myself from different moments. My 1999 self could see my 2005 self, and vice versa. The beings explained that time is not linear as we perceive it, but layered. They can move between these layers as we walk between rooms. During this contact, Roberto witnessed specific future events: the 2020 global pandemic, the development of advanced artificial intelligence, and most disturbingly, a crisis humanity would face in 2027 that would determine whether the species was ready to join what they called the Galactic Confederation. Eighth contact, October 8th, 2023. Location, unknown. The last documented contact occurred just months before Roberto's death, when he already knew his cancer was terminal. The description is fragmented, as if the memory was painful or incomplete. They took me to their world, or one of their worlds. It was beautiful beyond words, but also terribly strange. Purple skies, 3 suns, architecture that seemed to grow organically from the land itself. I saw other primary witnesses from different planets, different species, all documenting their own acclimatization processes. Humanity is not the first species to go through this, but we could be the last if we fail. The beings revealed that 2024 would mark the end of the acclimatization period. The device left in 1999 would activate once more, but this time not to observe, but to communicate directly with the governments of Earth. Humanity's reaction to this communication would determine the future of the species. August 22nd, 2024, 14:30 hours. CEFANI Facility Analysis Lab. Dr. Vázquez was reviewing Roberto's documentation for the third time when his assistant, Dr. Sofia Ramirez, burst into the office, her face pale. "Doctor, you need to see this immediately. The Sonora lab just reported activity at the site where the device disappeared." Over a video conference, the Sonora team showed real-time images from the storage site, in the exact spot where the device had vanished in 2019. Something new had appeared, a crystalline structure, approximately 2 meters tall, emitting a pulsating blue-violet light. "It appeared exactly 45 minutes ago," reported Dr. Miguel Santos from Sonora. "The ambient temperature has dropped 15 degrees Celsius in a 100-meter radius. All electronic instruments fail when they get within 50 meters. But the most disturbing part was the sound. The structure was emitting the same low-frequency pattern Roberto had described in 1999, but amplified. The audio recordings, when analyzed, revealed it was not just prime numbers this time. It was specific coordinates, the exact locations of every one of the 144 primary witnesses around the world. An analyst had been monitoring social media and international news. "Doctor, we're not the only ones. In the last 6 hours, identical structures have been reported in 23 different countries. All of them appeared in locations related to historical UFO sightings or at high-security military bases." Dr. Vázquez immediately activated the international communication protocols CEFANI had established with similar organizations. The information that began to flow painted a picture of a globally synchronized, coordinated event. United States. The Pentagon confirmed a similar structure had appeared at Area 51. The official statement spoke of a technological event of undetermined origin being investigated by the competent authorities. United Kingdom. The Ministry of Defense reported anomalous activity at RAF Rendlesham Forest, site of the famous 1980 UFO incident. The structure had appeared at the exact spot of the original reported landing. France. JPAN, the Unidentified Aerospace Phenomena Study Group, confirmed a manifestation at the Nancy Air Base with identical characteristics. Russia. Though initially denying any anomalous activity, unofficial sources confirmed a similar structure had appeared at a classified facility in Siberia. China. Official silence was total, but commercial satellite images showed unusual military activity near the Yulin space facilities. Brazil. The Brazilian Air Force confirmed an anomalous event at the Anápolis base, matching the international reports exactly. The pattern was clear. The structures were appearing specifically in locations with a prior history of UFO activity or at high-security military installations. But there was something more. Each structure was synchronized, pulsing with the same frequency, as if they were all parts of a single planetary-wide communication system that had just been switched on. August 25, 2024. Maria Isabel Sheraton Hotel, Mexico City. Patricia Dominguez had flown in from Guadalajara as soon as she heard about the new developments. The 63-year-old woman who had broken her silence after Roberto's death now had crucial information she had kept hidden for decades. "I had contacts too," she revealed during a private interview with Dr. Vázquez and a small team of investigators. "But not like Roberto's. Mine were different, more subtle, more terrifying." Patricia explained that since the year 2000, she had experienced what she initially attributed to post-traumatic stress. Vivid recurring dreams where she found herself in a place she didn't recognize, communicating with beings who spoke directly into her mind. For years, she sought psychiatric help, convinced she was losing her sanity, but the dreams were too consistent, too detailed. "Always the same place," she whispered, "a circular room with walls that seemed to be made of solidified water. Three beings I could never see clearly but whose voices were unmistakable. They taught me things. Mathematics that shouldn't exist, physics that contradicts everything we know." Patricia had documented everything in notebooks she had kept hidden for over 2 decades. The notebooks she now presented to the research team contained equations and diagrams that defied comprehension. Dr. Vázquez immediately contacted the Institute of Physics at UNAM for an urgent consultation. Dr. Elena Castillo, a theoretical physicist specializing in quantum mechanics, reviewed the notebooks for 3 days before issuing her verdict. "These equations," she said, her voice heavy with disbelief, "describe a form of space-time manipulation that is, theoretically, decades beyond our current understanding. Some of these formulas could revolutionize our comprehension of fundamental physics, but they require a mathematics that, as a species, we have not yet developed." More unsettling still, some of the equations in Patricia's notebooks mirrored, with unnerving precision, calculations that CERN scientists had developed in total secrecy only months before as part of classified experiments on particle manipulation. August 30th, 2024. UNAM Supercomputing Center. The breakthrough came when the international team, coordinated by CEFANI, managed to synchronize the audio recordings from all the global structures. By playing the frequencies from the 23 active sites simultaneously, a complex pattern emerged, one that clearly constituted a structured message. Dr. Sarah Chen from MIT, now working directly with the Mexican team, led the decoding process using artificial intelligence algorithms specifically trained to recognize non-human communication patterns. "It's not a language as we understand human languages," Chen explained during an urgent video conference with representatives of the involved governments. "It's more akin to a multi-dimensional data transmission system. Each frequency carries multiple simultaneous layers of information." The decoded message was vast and complex, but the first part was clear and unequivocal. Inhabitants of the third planet of the Sol system, the period of acclimatization has concluded. For the past 25 terrestrial years, 144 of your individuals have served as primary witnesses to our program of gradual integration. Your governments have been indirectly informed of our presence through these witnesses. We have monitored your technological development, your social evolution, and your capacity to integrate new information that challenges your existing paradigms. The results are mixed, but sufficient to proceed to the next phase. Hodorisum, your species stands at an evolutionary inflection point. You have 1,095 terrestrial rotations, 3 years, to demonstrate that you can unify your resources, resolve your internal conflicts, and prepare for open contact with the Galactic Confederation of 247 star-faring civilizations. The message continued with technical specifications for the construction of communication devices that would allow direct contact, along with stark warnings about the consequences of failing the evaluation. The revelation of the full message, leaked through U.S. military sources on September 5, 2024, caused what historians would later call the Great Awakening. Reactions varied dramatically by region. In the United States, the president convened an emergency meeting of the National Security Council. Leaked sources suggested deep divisions between military factions who wanted to prepare defenses against an alien invasion, and scientists who argued for peaceful cooperation. In Europe, the European Union established a special committee, jointly led by France and Germany, to coordinate a continental response. The European approach was more cautious but diplomatic, acknowledging the possibility that contact was inevitable. In China, the government initially denied any knowledge of the events, but subsequently announced the formation of a national advanced space studies program with a budget of $50 billion. In Russia, the Kremlin adopted a nationalist stance, claiming that Russia had maintained secret contact with extraterrestrial civilizations since the Soviet era, and was better prepared than the West for galactic integration. In the developing world, many nations of the global South expressed concern that developed countries would attempt to monopolize access to alien technology, perpetuating existing inequalities. The revelation of the 144 Primary Witnesses program led CEFANI to launch an international search to locate and interview other individuals who might have had experiences similar to Roberto's. James Patterson, Primary Witness 27, United Kingdom. A retired air traffic controller from Heathrow, Patterson had experienced the exact same pattern of annual contacts as Roberto, beginning with an unreported incident on December 12, 1999. His documentation included photographs and audio recordings that fully corroborated the Mexican testimony. "I thought I was going mad for 25 years, Patterson admitted during a BBC interview that was broadcast globally. But when I saw Roberto Méndez's story, I knew immediately I wasn't alone. Everything matched: the dates, the descriptions, even the predictions about our deaths." Patterson revealed that he too had received information about future events during his contacts, including specific predictions about the COVID-19 pandemic and the development of advanced artificial intelligence, which had been fulfilled with disturbing accuracy. Dr. Kenji Nakamura, Primary Witness MIG-89, Japan, an astrophysicist at the National Astronomical Observatory of Japan. Nakamura had documented similar contacts that began after an unexplained sighting at the Subaru facility in Hawaii. His case was unique because the beings had shared specific technical knowledge about astronomy with him, which had led to significant advances in exoplanet detection. "They showed me the exact location of 47 habitable planets that our instruments had not yet detected," Nakamura explained during a press conference in Tokyo. Over the last 5 years, we have confirmed the existence of 31 of them using techniques I cannot explain how I knew. Dr. Amara Okafor, primary witness, MENAF 112, Nigeria. An aerospace engineer working for the National Space Agency of Nigeria, Okafor had been contacted during the launch of the first Nigerian satellite in 2003. The beings had provided her with technical corrections that saved the mission from a catastrophic failure. "They didn't just give me the solutions," she explained in an interview with CNN. "They taught me engineering principles that our manuals don't cover. Technology that is decades ahead of what we publicly know." September 15, 2024. United Nations Headquarters, New York. The UN General Assembly convened an extraordinary emergency session to address what the Secretary General described as the most significant challenge in the history of the human species. For the first time in decades, the world's major powers seemed genuinely unified by an external threat or opportunity. Dr. M. Vázquez was invited to present CEFANI's findings before the full assembly. His presentation, which lasted 3 hours, clearly delineated the situation facing humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is overwhelming and undeniable. For the last 25 years, we have been carefully observed, evaluated, and gradually prepared for contact with a confederation of galactic civilizations. The Primary Witness Program has documented a systematic process of acclimatization, which now culminates in a formal evaluation. We have 3 years to prove that we are a mature species capable of peaceful integration with a broader cosmic community. The criteria are specific: unification of resources to solve global crises, elimination of international armed conflicts, and the development of institutions capable of representing humanity as a single entity. If we fail this evaluation, the implications are not entirely clear, but the primary witnesses have consistently suggested that we could face an indefinite planetary quarantine or, in the worst-case scenario, direct intervention to prevent us from becoming a threat to other civilizations. The response from the international community was surprisingly coordinated. In October 2024, 193 countries signed the Humanity Preparation Accords, establishing Project Unity, an unprecedented global initiative to meet the extraterrestrial evaluation criteria. The project's main components included: 1. Unification of global resources, creation of a $2 trillion joint fund to address climate change, extreme poverty, and global hunger. Mandatory sharing of critical medical and energy technologies. Establishment of a global education and internet network to ensure universal access to knowledge. 2. Coordinated gradual disarmament, a 75% reduction in global military spending over the next 3 years. Complete elimination of nuclear weapons under international supervision. Conversion of military facilities into centers for scientific research and space exploration. 3. Global governance institutions. Expansion of the UN's authority to include direct executive power in global crises. Creation of a World Court of Justice with universal jurisdiction. Establishment of the Council of Human Representation, the body that would serve as the official interlocutor with extraterrestrial civilizations. But not all of humanity received these developments with enthusiasm. Multiple resistance movements emerged. The Earthly Purists, a movement led by ultra-conservative factions from various countries, rejected any contact with extraterrestrial civilizations, arguing it was a violation of human sovereignty and potentially a disguised existential threat. The Scientific Skeptics, a group of prominent scientists, argued that all the evidence could be an elaborate disinformation operation orchestrated by a superpower to establish a one-world government under its control. The religious fundamentalists, multiple denominations who interpreted the events as signs of the end times or as demonic manifestations designed to lead humanity away from their respective faiths. These groups began to organize mass protests, civil disobedience, and in some cases direct sabotage of facilities related to Project Unity. October 8, 2024. Exactly 25 years after the first contact, at 02:14:33 Mexico City time, all crystalline structures around the world activated simultaneously with unprecedented intensity. This time, the message required no decoding. It was transmitted directly into every major language on Earth. We have observed your initial efforts at unification with interest. The progress is notable but insufficient. Your leaders have begun the correct process, but the resistance from segments of your population suggests that the fundamental division of your species persists. To assist in your evaluation, we will provide a direct demonstration of the technologies available to species that achieve successful integration. This demonstration will also serve as final proof of our presence, eliminating any remaining doubt. In 72 terrestrial hours, we will manifest a demonstration facility on each continent. These facilities will operate for exactly 30 days, providing access to advanced medical, energy, and communication technologies. At the end of this period, the facilities will be permanently deactivated. Your response to this final demonstration will determine the course of your evaluation. Unity in harnessing these technologies for the global benefit will result in approval for integration. Competitive exploitation or militarization will result in classification as an unprepared species. Your trial period has begun. October 11th, 2024. Various global locations exactly 72 hours after the message. 7 monumental structures materialized simultaneously in strategically distributed locations. In Africa, a 200-meter-tall crystal pyramid rose from the heart of the Sahara Desert, immediately generating enough clean energy to power the entire northern continent. In Asia, a 150-meter diameter floating sphere appeared in the Himalayas, beginning to purify the atmosphere on a continental scale, removing pollutants and greenhouse gases at a rate impossible according to known science. In Europe, a complex of interconnected hexagonal towers in the Swiss Alps instantly established a quantum communication network, enabling internet connections 1,000 times faster than any existing technology. In North America, in the heartland of the United States, a structure resembling a gigantic 300-meter-tall metallic tree began to regenerate degraded agricultural soils in a 500-kilometer radius, restoring fertility to pre-industrial levels in a matter of hours. In South America, deep in the Brazilian Amazon, a network of crystal spires began to exponentially accelerate the growth of the rainforest, while simultaneously capturing massive amounts of atmospheric carbon. In Australia, a partially visible subterranean facility in the center of the continent began to desalinate ocean water and pump it through instantly appearing channels, greening thousands of square kilometers of desert. In Antarctica, a structure of initially unknown purpose began stabilizing the ice sheets, preventing further melting and actively starting to restore the ice lost over previous decades. Each facility was protected by an invisible energy barrier that allowed for observation but prevented any military approach or attempt at forced technology extraction. October 15th, 2024. Vatican City, Pope Francis, after days of prayer and consultation with theologians from multiple Christian denominations, issued a historic papal declaration that would become known as Fratris Cosmici, Cosmic Brothers. Cosmic Brothers, children of God, the address began. For centuries we have looked to the stood and wondered if we are alone in the vastness of divine creation. We now know we are not. The revelation of other intelligent life does not contradict our faith. but expands it. If God created the universe in all its immensity, is it not logical that his love would also extend to other conscious creatures among the stars? The papal declaration had a massive domino effect. The Grand Mufti of Mecca issued a similar fatwa, interpreting the events as a manifestation of Allah's infinite creativity. Buddhist and Hindu leaders were even more receptive, seeing the events as a confirmation of teachings about multiple forms of consciousness in the cosmos. However, fundamentalist denominations reacted violently. In the United States, evangelical pastor Marcus Thompson organized the Earthly Crusade, a movement that interpreted the extraterrestrial events as the fulfillment of apocalyptic prophecies. These are the demons of the end times disguised as angels of light. Thompson preached to crowds of tens of thousands. They are tempting us with devilish technology to turn us away from God. We must resist. Religious tensions intensified as several televangelists began to claim the aliens were, in fact, fallen angels mentioned in the Book of Enoch, attempting to establish a satanic one-world government. Despite the organized resistance, millions of people began to experience the benefits of the demonstration facilities directly. The results were impossible to deny. Medical breakthroughs. The facilities emitted energy fields that dramatically accelerated natural healing processes. Patients with terminal cancer within a 100-kilometer radius of each installation began to experience complete, verified remissions. Paraplegics regained mobility. The congenitally blind began to see. Dr. Maria Santos, an oncologist at Mexico City General Hospital, documented cases that defied all medical explanation. In 3 weeks, we have seen 247 cases of complete remission from various types of cancer. The tumors don't just disappear, they disintegrate at a molecular level, leaving no trace of scar tissue. It is as if the body remembers its perfect state of health and simply returns to it. Environmental regeneration. The environmental effects were equally spectacular. Around the Amazonian facility, species once thought extinct began to reappear. Polluted rivers ran clean in a matter of days. The air in cities near the installations achieved a purity not recorded since the pre-industrial age. Energy became abundant. The African facility generated more clean power than the entire continent could consume. Neighboring countries began to experiment with the complete elimination of fossil fuels, discovering that the alien energy grid adapted to demand automatically. October 20th, 2024. The Pentagon, Washington, D.C. Despite international agreements on non-militarization, U.S. Secretary of Defense James Mitchell convened a classified meeting with Special Forces commanders. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice grim, "these devices represent the single greatest strategic advantage in the history of modern warfare. Whoever controls this technology controls the future of the planet. We cannot allow them to remain in open access." Operation Prometheus was designed as a coordinated attempt by multiple military powers to simultaneously infiltrate the facilities and extract technology samples. The plan involved special forces teams from the United States, China, Russia, and secretly Israel and France. October 22nd, 2024, 0300 hours. The Himalayan facility, the first infiltration attempt, was executed by a joint Chinese-American team, equipped with the most advanced camouflage technology available. The soldiers approached the installation from multiple directions, using reconnaissance drones and electromagnetic decoys. What happened next was recorded by satellite security cameras and would become the most shared event in the history of the Internet. As they crossed the invisible energy barrier, the soldiers were not harmed or repelled. Instead, they simply stopped, Their weapons peacefully dematerialized, dissolving into particles of light. The soldiers remained motionless for exactly 8 minutes as a voice spoke directly into their minds. Sergeant Chen Wei, leader of the Chinese team, would later describe the experience. "It wasn't threatening," he said. "It was educational. They showed me images from the history of human warfare, from the first tribal battles to nuclear bombs. Then they showed me what happened to other species who couldn't overcome their militaristic instincts when faced with advanced technology. I saw entire planets turn to desert because their inhabitants tried to weaponize technology they didn't understand. I saw civilizations that destroyed themselves in wars over resources that could have been infinite with cooperation. And then I saw the species that passed the test. The ones who achieved galactic integration and now live in an abundance and peace we cannot even imagine." The soldiers were released, unharmed, but profoundly transformed. Many subsequently resigned their military positions and became advocates for world peace. The failed military attempts created a new category of witness: individuals who had experienced direct contact with the intelligence controlling the facilities. Their testimonies were consistent and unsettling. Captain Sarah Thompson, U.S. Navy SEALs. "They showed me our history from their perspective. We're like children playing with dynamite in a library full of flammable books. Our tendency toward violence and competition isn't inherently evil, but it's incompatible with the power of technologies that can alter entire planets. They also showed me the possible positive future: humans working alongside dozens of different species on projects that span entire galaxies. Exploring parallel universes, creating life where none existed, preserving the history of millions of civilizations. It's beautiful beyond words, but it requires that we mature as a species." Colonel Vladimir Petrov, Russian Spetsnaz. "The experience changed my fundamental understanding of strength. Real strength doesn't come from the ability to destroy, but from the ability to create and protect. These entities could exterminate us without effort, but instead, they offer us help. That is the most impressive demonstration of power I have ever witnessed." The failed military attempts and the testimonies of the transformed soldiers intensified global divisions. Humanity was polarizing into 3 main factions: the integrationists, led by scientists, progressive religious leaders, and young activists, argued for complete cooperation with the alien entities. They saw this as the greatest opportunity for human evolution in history. The purists, a coalition of nationalists, religious fundamentalists, and militarists, rejected all alien contact as an existential threat to humanity. They organized mass protests, sabotaged projects related to the facilities, and even established alien-free zones in some regions. And the cautious, the silent majority who recognized the benefits of the alien technology but feared the long-term implications. They wanted to move forward slowly, maintaining human control over the integration process. November 1st, 2024. Yellowstone National Park, United States. The most serious crisis of the demonstration period occurred when a radical group of purists, led by former Colonel Marcus Valle, attempted to sabotage the North American facility using tactical nuclear explosives stolen from a military installation. "If these demons want our planet," Valle declared in a video that went viral, "they'll have to take it from our cold, dead hands. I would rather see humanity extinct than enslaved by cosmic invaders." The attack was coordinated with the same military precision as the previous infiltration operations, but with destructive intent. 14 armed men carrying nuclear devices approached the Kansas facility during a thunderstorm, hoping the atmospheric conditions would interfere with any detection systems. What happened next defied all expectations. As the attackers drew near with their nuclear weapons, the alien installation responded in a way it never had before. It actively defended itself. A barrier of golden energy expanded from the facility, reaching the attackers 2 kilometers away. The nuclear explosives did not detonate. They simply ceased to exist. Their fissile atoms were instantly converted into inert elements. But the attackers remained unharmed. Instead, each of them experienced what scientists would later call a full consciousness download. For exactly 8 minutes, they experientially lived the complete lives of every person who would have died had their bombs detonated. They felt the terror, the pain, the loss of entire families, the destruction of ecosystems, the generations of radiation and death. Marcus Valle, the leader of the attack, emerged from the experience completely broken. At an impromptu press conference, weeping openly, he declared, "I saw my own granddaughter die from the cancer caused by the radiation I would have released. I experienced the deaths of millions of innocents. These entities showed us a mercy we did not deserve. We are the monsters, not them." November 8th, 2024. 1 full month after the facilities activated. Exactly as promised, the installations began to deactivate after 30 days. But before their energy faded completely, they broadcast a final message that would be simultaneously the most hopeful and terrifying in human history. Inhabitants of Earth, the demonstration period has concluded. We have observed your reactions to our technologies with great interest. The results confirm both our hopes and our concerns. Your positive responses have been extraordinary. We have seen unprecedented cooperation between nations that were formerly enemies. We have observed personal sacrifices for the common good that indicate a developed moral capacity. Your young, especially, have demonstrated an open-mindedness and compassion that suggest a promising future. However, we have also confirmed that approximately 23% of your population remains committed to thought patterns that are incompatible with galactic integration. The persistence of organized violence, extreme nationalism, and fundamentalist religious resistance represents a significant obstacle. Therefore, we have decided to implement what you might call selective gradual integration. Not all of your species will be invited to participate in the galactic community immediately. Those individuals who demonstrate emotional, intellectual, and ethical readiness will be progressively introduced to advanced technologies and knowledge. This process will begin in 60 of your Earth days. Approximately 2.1 billion individuals have been identified as initial candidates for accelerated integration, based on their responses during this evaluation period. These individuals will begin to experience direct contact and access to specific technologies. The rest of your species will continue its natural development with minimal intervention and support to prevent self-destruction. As additional individuals meet the necessary criteria, they will be incorporated into the integration program. This is not a final judgment, but a recognition that the evolution of consciousness occurs at different rates among individuals, even within the same species. We have millennia of experience with this process across hundreds of civilizations. For those selected, prepare yourselves. Your lives are about to change in ways you can barely imagine. For those not selected, this is not a condemnation, but an opportunity to continue growing. The criteria for integration will remain open indefinitely. Humanity has passed its initial evaluation. Your future among the stars is assured, but it will be a future that unfolds over generations, not years. November 10th, 2024. Government offices around the world. The most startling revelation came when the governments of all 193 UN member countries simultaneously received detailed lists of their citizens selected for accelerated integration. The selection criteria, when statistically analyzed, revealed fascinating patterns. Age: 67% of those selected were between 16 and 35 years old. suggesting a preference for individuals with greater mental plasticity and less attachment to existing paradigms. Education. Contrary to expectations, formal education level was not a significant factor. There were physicists with doctorates and illiterate farmers on the lists. The criterion seemed to be more about curiosity and open-mindedness than accumulated knowledge. Profession. The most represented professions were educators, healthcare workers, artists, and, curiously, children and adolescents with no defined profession. The least represented were military personnel, politicians, and high-level corporate executives. Geography. The distribution was surprisingly uniform globally, but with slightly higher concentrations in developing countries and regions that had recently suffered from conflict. Religion. The selected represented all major world religions proportionally, but with an overrepresentation of individuals who identified as spiritual but not religious, or who practiced syncretic traditions. The lists created unprecedented familial divisions. Families found themselves split between selected and non-selected members, generating complex emotional conflicts. The Rodriguez family, Guadalajara, Mexico. Maria Rodriguez, a 34-year-old pediatric nurse, was selected along with her 14-year-old son, Carlos. Her husband, Jorge, a 45-year-old petroleum engineer, and her eldest daughter, Ana, a 22-year-old business student, were not on the list. "It's as if they've divided us into the good and the bad," Jorge explained during an interview. "But my wife is no better a person than I am. My son is no more valuable than my daughter. How can they make these distinctions?" Maria added, "Jorge is furious, but I see the logic. Carlos has always been different, empathetic beyond his years, fascinated by space, dreaming of a world without borders. I work saving sick children. Jorge works for an industry that's killing the planet. Ana wants to be the CEO of a multinational corporation. The criteria makes sense, but that doesn't make it any less painful." The Chen family, Singapore. The Chen's case became emblematic of the generational tensions. Grandparents Wei Ming, 78, and Li Hua, 76, were selected, along with their 19-year-old granddaughter Mei Ling. Her parents, successful middle-aged professionals, were not on the list. "The elderly have seen enough war and suffering to value peace," Wei Ming explained in Mandarin during a globally subtitled interview. "The young still have open minds, those of us in the middle. We are too busy competing to see the value of cooperation." December 15th, 2024. Locations distributed globally. The first contacts with selected individuals began exactly 60 days after the final message, as promised. There were no spaceships landing in backyards or dramatic abductions. Instead, the contacts were subtle, personal, and occurred in moments and places where each individual would feel most comfortable. Emma Peterson, 28, elementary school teacher, Minnesota, USA. I was preparing my classroom for the next day when I noticed an extra adult sitting in one of the small chairs. He wasn't threatening, he seemed familiar, like a childhood friend I hadn't seen in years, though I knew I'd never met him. He spoke to me without moving his lips, directly in my mind, but in my own voice. He explained that I had been selected to learn new methods of education that would help prepare human children for an expanded future. It wasn't an order, but an invitation. He showed me teaching techniques that use music, color, and something he called empathetic resonance to accelerate learning and simultaneously develop emotional intelligence. In 1 hour, I learned more about effective pedagogy than I did in 4 years of university. Dr. Raj Patel, 42, pediatrician, Mumbai, India. The contact happened in my clinic during my night round, One of my patients, a 6-year-old girl with terminal leukemia, suddenly opened her eyes and smiled at me. But it wasn't her speaking when she said, "Doctor, we are ready to teach you." For the next 40 minutes, using this child as an intermediary, I learned medical techniques that could accelerate the human body's natural healing. Using specific sound frequencies and what they called conscious cellular resonance. I immediately applied the techniques to the girl. Her leukemia went into complete remission within 72 hours. I have since treated 23 additional patients with 100% success. But the techniques only work when applied with genuinely compassionate intent. They cannot be mechanized or commercialized. Carlos Méndez, 16, high school student, Bogotá, Colombia. It wasn't scary like I thought it would be. I was in my room doing homework when my reflection in the mirror started moving independently of me. My reflection smiled and began to speak. He explained that I had been selected to be part of a new generation of communication bridges between humanity and the galactic community. They taught me a language that doesn't use words but direct concepts, structured emotions, and something they called full experience transmission. I can now communicate directly with other selected young people all over the world instantly without any technology. We have become something like a global neural network of adolescents, able to share knowledge, emotions, and solve problems collectively. It's incredible. Individual contacts soon revealed that the accelerated integration was not a singular event, but an ongoing educational program personalized for each selected individual. The selected began to report skills and knowledge that developed gradually. Educators learned pedagogical techniques that could accelerate learning while simultaneously fostering empathy and systemic thinking. Healthcare workers developed intuitive diagnostic skills and healing techniques that combined advanced medical science with a holistic understanding of well-being. Artists found their creativity expanding exponentially, creating works that transmitted complex emotions and concepts directly into the observer's consciousness. Scientists began to grasp physical principles that would revolutionize humanity's understanding of reality, but only when they applied this knowledge for the collective good. Adolescents and children developed limited telepathic communication skills and an ability to resolve conflicts through deep, empathic understanding. December 31st, 2024. Secret headquarters of the Pure Earth Alliance, location undisclosed. The most sophisticated resistance organization to emerge was the Pure Earth Alliance, the PEA, an international coalition of military, industrial, political, and fundamentalist religious leaders who saw galactic integration as an existential threat to what they considered the essence of humanity. The de facto leader of the PEA was retired General Michael Harrison, a former commander of NORAD, whose 19-year-old daughter had been lost to the selection lists. In a leaked recording from a secret meeting, Harrison outlined the resistance's strategy. "Gentlemen, we are facing the extinction of humanity as we know it. These extraterrestrials are not liberators, they are colonizers using methods more sophisticated than the imperial powers of the past. They are dividing our families, corrupting our young, and gradually replacing our culture with their own. Accelerated integration is only the first step. Eventually, the selected will become hybrids more loyal to their alien masters than to their own species. We have a window of opportunity before this process becomes irreversible." The PEA's strategy involved three main components: deprogramming, attempts to rescue selected individuals through intensive therapy, isolation from external influences, and, in extreme cases, experimental medical procedures to disrupt the extraterrestrial connection. Technological sabotage, coordinated attacks against institutions and individuals using technologies or knowledge derived from the integration program. Information warfare, A massive media campaign to convince the global population that galactic integration was a form of disguised slavery. December 25th, 2024. Boston Children's Hospital, Massachusetts. The PEA's first serious attack on a selected individual occurred on Christmas Day, when a team of operatives attempted to rescue Dr. Sarah Martinez, a 29-year-old pediatrician who had begun using accelerated healing techniques on terminal patients. The attack was meticulously planned. A six-person team, including two doctors sympathetic to the PEA, entered the hospital disguised as medical staff during the holiday shift change. Their plan was to sedate Dr. Martinez and transport her to a secret facility for deprogramming treatment. What they hadn't anticipated, however, was that the children under Dr. Martinez's care had developed an empathic connection with her, born from the very healing techniques she had learned. As the attackers approached, 23 child patients, all under the age of 10, simultaneously experienced a collective protective response. The children began to emit a low-frequency, harmonized sound, which caused the attackers to experience severe disorientation, but no physical harm. Hospital security responded immediately, but by the time they arrived, the attackers were unconscious with expressions of profound peace on their faces. When they awoke, each one reported experiencing visions of the very children Dr. Martinez had healed. Children who would have died without the techniques she had learned through the integration program. The attackers emerged from the incident as defenders of Dr. Martinez and the program. The leader of the attack, Dr. Robert Sterling, a renowned neurosurgeon who had lost research funding when his institute began to focus resources on integration technologies, later stated, "I saw through the eyes of a 4-year-old girl whose brain cancer had been cured by Dr. Martinez. I experienced her joy, her gratitude, the love of her parents. I realized I wasn't rescuing Dr. Martinez. I was trying to deprive the world of a healing angel." January 1st, 2025. The first day of the year that would change everything. The Christmas events marked the beginning of a societal division that sociologists began to call the Great Human Schism. Humanity was fracturing, not just along traditional political or religious lines, but along a fundamental divide concerning the very nature of human identity and the future of the species. The integrated, those selected for the acceleration program, began to develop capabilities that dramatically set them apart from the general population. Not just advanced technical skills, but shifts in perception, expanded empathy, and an intuitive understanding of complex systems. The traditionals, a term they preferred over unselected, maintained that these capabilities represented a corruption of the fundamental human essence. They argued that humanity was being gradually replaced by alien hybrids disguised as enhanced versions of themselves. The Bridges, an emerging third group of unselected individuals who actively supported integration, worked to maintain connections between the two increasingly divergent communities. January 15th, 2025. The home of Carmen Gutierrez Viuda de Méndez, Coyoacán. Carmen, now 68 and the only direct survivor of the original 1999 incident, had maintained a low profile during the tumultuous events of 2024. But recent developments compelled her to break her silence once more. In an interview with Maria Elena Gutierrez, who had continued to document the story she had helped reveal, Carmen disclosed that she had been having her own contacts, different from Roberto's but just as significant. Roberto wasn't the only one who was contacted, Carmen admitted, holding a photograph of her late husband. "I've been receiving visits too, but not like Roberto's. Mine have been gentler, more maternal." Carmen described contacts that began a few weeks after Roberto's death, visitations from what she described as feminine presences, who spoke to her in dreams but left physical evidence of their presence. Flowers that did not grow in her garden would appear on her table each morning. Family photographs would be subtly rearranged to include faces she didn't recognize but which felt familiar. They explained that Roberto had been selected as the primary witness, but I had been chosen for something different. To be the guardian of memory, my role was to preserve not just Roberto's memories, but the emotional memory of the entire human experience during this transition period. The presences had shown her that galactic integration was not just a technological or intellectual process, but a profoundly emotional one. Humanity needed to maintain a connection to its roots, its struggles, its triumphs, to avoid losing itself in the process of cosmic expansion. They showed me other species that had gone through this process, Carmen continued. Some lost their essence. They became so advanced they forgot what it meant to be who they originally were. Others held on to their hearts and became some of the most valued civilizations in the galaxy because they could teach others about the importance of love, loss, and hope. February 20th, 2025. Globally coordinated. One of the most extraordinary developments of the integration program was what scientists began to call the global empathy experiment. The young people selected for the program, particularly those under 18, had developed an empathic communication ability that transcended geographical, linguistic, and cultural boundaries. Carlos Méndez, the Colombian teenager who had been one of the first contacts, had become a sort of unofficial coordinator for this global youth network. His room in Bogotá had transformed into a communication hub where he could simultaneously connect with hundreds of other young people around the world. It's not telepathy in the sense of reading thoughts, Carlos explained during a demonstration for researchers from the National University of Colombia. It's more like sharing feelings and concepts directly. I can feel when Yuki in Tokyo is worried about her sick grandmother, or when Ahmed in Cairo is excited about solving a complex math problem. Researchers documented that this youth network had begun to solve problems collectively in ways that defied traditional psychological understanding. A complex mathematical problem presented to a teenager in Brazil could be solved collaboratively by young people in Finland, Kenya, and Australia, working as a single geographically distributed mind. But even more impressive was their ability to resolve emotional and social conflicts. When ethnic tensions began to escalate in a region of Africa, the connected youth in the area reported the tensions to the global network, which collectively developed and implemented resolution strategies that combined deep cultural understanding with genuine empathy. Late March 2025. Global education systems. The impact of the integration program on formal education created an unprecedented crisis. Selected students began to dramatically outperform their unselected peers, not just in technical knowledge, but in systemic thinking, creative problem-solving, and emotional intelligence. In a typical high school in Manchester, England, 23 out of 450 students had been selected. These 23 students began to demonstrate capabilities that made traditional education seem obsolete. They could grasp advanced scientific concepts intuitively, solve complex mathematical problems through multidimensional visualization, and, most unsettling for traditional educators, teach other students more effectively than trained teachers. It's as if we're running two parallel schools, explained Headmistress Margaret Thompson. The traditional students follow our normal curriculum, but the integrated students have created their own collaborative learning system that is decades ahead of our methods. The situation created intense social tensions. Parents of unselected students began to protest, arguing that the education system was becoming inherently discriminatory. Some went so far as to pull their children out of schools with significant populations of integrated students. March 15th, 2025. published simultaneously in 47 languages. The integrated youth, led by the empathic communication network Carlos Méndez had developed, published a manifesto that shook the foundations of the division between the integrated and the traditionals. To our families, our friends, and our fellow humans who have not been selected for accelerated integration, we are your children, your siblings, your students. We have not stopped being human. We have not been corrupted or replaced by alien influences. We are you, but with expanded capabilities and a broader perspective. We understand your fear. If our roles were reversed, we would be afraid, too. But we ask you to look at our actions, not just our abilities. We have used our new knowledge to heal your sick, resolve your conflicts, and protect your environment. Not to dominate you, but to serve you better. The division between integrated and traditional is artificial and harmful. We are one human family facing the greatest change in our history together. Some of us have been given tools to prepare the way, but the destination is for all of us. We do not want to replace you, we want to uplift you. We do not want to separate from you, we want to bring you with us to the stars. The selection criteria were not about worth or merit. They were about specific preparation for specific roles during this transition. Every one of you has abilities and perspectives that we need and that the galactic community values. We ask for patience, we ask for trust, and above all, we ask that you allow us to prove that the future we are building is a future for all of humanity. With love and respect, the youth of tomorrow. The manifesto had a particular impact on Carmen Méndez, who had been struggling with complex feelings about not being selected, despite her intimate connection to the entire process. In a public response that went viral, Carmen wrote, "Dear youth of tomorrow, I am Carmen, widow of Roberto Méndez, the man who began this extraordinary story. Like many of my contemporaries, I have watched your developments with a mixture of awe, pride, and yes, some fear. But your words have reminded me of something my husband used to say. The sky belongs to everyone, Carmen, but some of us must learn to fly first, so we can teach the others. You are learning to fly, and we, your parents, grandparents, uncles, teachers, are here to make sure you never forget where you came from. To keep your feet connected to the earth even as your spirits touch the stars. Do not be afraid to be different, but also do not forget to be human. The universe is full of intelligence, but humanity has something unique to offer. Our heart, our struggles, our capacity to love deeply even in adversity. Fly high, dear children. We will watch over you from here, with infinite love, Carmen." Early April 2025, Geneva Convention Center, Switzerland. The growing division between the integrated and the traditionals had reached a critical point. Governments around the world, pressured by their divided populations and facing massive practical problems in education, public health, and social cohesion, convened the first Global Human Unification Conference. Representatives from every UN country gathered alongside leaders from both communities, integrated and traditional. For the first time since the crisis began, all human factions sat at the same table to address the future of the species. Dr. Enrique Vázquez, who had emerged as an unofficial spokesperson for the adult integrated, presented a radical proposal. We propose the creation of gradual integration zones, communities where traditional individuals can voluntarily experiment with integration technologies and techniques at their own pace. Without pressure, with the complete freedom to withdraw at any time. These zones would operate as social laboratories where we can demonstrate that integration does not require abandoning human identity but expanding it. Where traditionals can see firsthand that we are not their enemies, but their children, siblings, and neighbors with expanded abilities but unchanged hearts. The proposal was controversial. The PEA denounced it as a disguised indoctrination program. Some governments expressed concern over territorial sovereignty. But the public pressure, particularly from divided families who desperately wanted to reconnect, was overwhelming. May 15th, 2025. Multiple global locations. The first 5 gradual integration zones were established. In Costa Rica, a 100-square-kilometer area in the Guanacaste province, chosen for the nation's historic neutrality and commitment to peace. In New Zealand, a region on the South Island leveraging the country's geographic isolation and politically progressive culture. In Denmark, an area in Jutland representing the Nordic model of social welfare and cultural openness. In Botswana, a zone in the Kalahari Desert honoring the importance of including African perspectives in the process. And in Uruguay, a coastal region, selected for its history of innovative social policies and political stability. Each zone was designed to accommodate 50,000 initial residents, 25,000 integrated, and 25,000 traditionals, living side by side. Participation was entirely voluntary, with international guarantees of the freedom to leave at any time. The first residents arrived in mid-June of 2025. The results surpassed all expectations, both positive and negative. July 15th, 2025. Costa Rica Integration Zone. Maria Gonzalez, a 45-year-old traditional nurse from San Jose, had decided to move to the zone with her family after months of soul-searching. Her 16-year-old daughter, Aina, had been selected for integration, creating a familial tension that threatened to shatter decades of love. The first few days were strange, Maria admitted during an interview with Costa Rican television. Ana could do things I didn't understand. Diagnose medical issues just by touching patients, communicate with integrated doctors without speaking, cure headaches with techniques that seemed more like magic than medicine. But then, Ana started to teach me, slowly, patiently, just as I had taught her to walk when she was a baby. She showed me that her new abilities didn't make her less my daughter, but rather more capable of helping others, just as I had always wanted to do. Maria had begun to develop rudimentary versions of her daughter's intuitive diagnostic skills, not on the level of the integrated, but enough to dramatically improve her effectiveness as a nurse. I don't think I'll ever fully integrate, she explained, and that's okay. But I understand now that this isn't about replacing us. It's about helping us become better versions of ourselves. August 22nd, 2025. The lunar surface. The event that would fundamentally alter humanity's perspective on its place in the cosmos did not occur on Earth, but on the Moon. A joint lunar exploration mission, crewed by both integrated and traditional astronauts from multiple nations, made a discovery that would validate the most extraordinary claims of the primary witnesses. Commander Zhang Wei, integrated from China, and Dr. Michael O'Connor, traditional from the United States, were exploring craters on the lunar far side when their instruments detected electromagnetic anomalies, consistent with subterranean artificial structures. Initially, we thought it was interference from our own equipment, O'Connor reported from the lunar surface. But when Zhang used his expanded abilities to scan the area, he confirmed there was a massive structure directly beneath us. Using advanced excavation equipment, the team uncovered what was clearly non-human technology. Corridors built from materials that didn't exist on the terrestrial periodic table, machines that had been operating for millennia without maintenance, and most astonishingly, holographic archives containing the history of hundreds of galactic civilizations. It was like a cosmic library, Zhang described, but not just stored information, complete experiences. I was able to live through historical events from dozens of different worlds, to see how other species had navigated their own transition from a planetary civilization to members of the galactic community. The archives revealed that the moon had served as a galactic monitoring station for over 50,000 years, documenting the development of life on Earth and preparing for eventual contact with humanity. Humanity was not the first species to be evaluated for integration. It was the 247th. The lunar archives contained information that finally answered the most fundamental questions about the contact program. The purpose. The galactic community was not interested in conquest or exploitation, but in preservation. The universe was full of civilizations that had achieved advanced technological development, only to self-destruct before developing the wisdom to use their technology responsibly. The integration program was an effort to save promising species from this fate. The criteria. Selection for accelerated integration was not based on superiority, but on a specific psychological readiness to serve as bridges between civilizations. The individuals selected had demonstrated an ability to maintain their cultural identity while embracing broader perspectives. The future. The full integration of humanity would take approximately 50 Earth years. During this period, galactic technology would be introduced gradually but always under human control and at a pace that allowed for healthy cultural adaptation. The choice. At any point during the process, humanity could choose to discontinue integration and maintain independent development. Other species had made this choice and continued to be respected and protected by the galactic community. October 8, 2025. Mexico City International Airport, runway ZO5R. Exactly 26 years after the first landing, an extraterrestrial craft once again touched down on runway ZO5R. But this time, it was no secret. It was broadcast live across the globe, watched by thousands at the airport and billions through the media. Carmen Méndez, now 68 years old and walking with the aid of a cane, was invited to be the first civilian to step aboard the ship. The decision had been symbolic, the widow of the first primary witness. Representing the continuity between humanity's secret past and its open future, accompanied by representatives from every continent, both integrated and traditional, Carmen slowly ascended the ramp of solid light that extended from the ship. Inside, she was greeted by beings she could finally see clearly. Humanoids approximately 2 meters tall, with features that blended the familiar and the alien, but whose eyes radiated an ancient, benevolent intelligence. "Welcome, Carmen Gutierrez de Méndez." The voice spoke directly into her mind, yet it sounded like her own inner thoughts. "Your husband specifically asked that we bring you home when it was time." Carmen didn't immediately understand what home meant, but as the ship rose gently and the planet Earth became visible below her, she understood. It wasn't her physical home, but her cosmic home, the perspective from which humanity could finally see itself as part of a larger galactic family. For the next 2 hours, Carmen experienced what Roberto had lived through during his contacts, an expanded understanding of humanity as a young but promising species. In the context of a universe teeming with conscious, interconnected life. When she returned to the surface, her first words were broadcast globally. Roberto was right. We are not alone. We were never alone, and we will never be alone again. We are part of something beautiful and vast, and it is time for us to grow into it. December 31st, 2025. Global. The last day of 2025 officially marked the end of the year of revelation and the beginning of what historians had already begun to call the era of integration. Global statistics painted a picture of unprecedented transformation. 78% of the world's population now supported the continuation of the galactic integration program. International armed conflicts had decreased by 89%. The integration zones had expanded to include 23 locations with over 2.3 million residents. An additional 847,000 individuals had qualified for accelerated integration during the year. Clean energy production had increased by 340% globally, using hybrid human galactic technologies. But perhaps the most significant change was psychological. Humanity had begun to see itself not as an isolated species fighting over limited resources on a hostile planet, but as junior members of a cosmic community dedicated to the preservation and proliferation of intelligent consciousness in the universe. Carmen Méndez, who had decided to spend her remaining years writing Roberto's complete memoirs and documenting humanity's transformation, summarized the global sentiment in her final diary entry of the year. Roberto used to say that air traffic controllers were conductors of a cosmic orchestra, guiding each moving light to its safe destination. I understand now that he was being more literal than any of us could have possibly imagined. Humanity has been gently guided to a safe landing at a cosmic airport we never even knew existed. The flight was turbulent, terrifying at times, but we have arrived. Roberto would be so proud. The sky, it turns out, was never the limit. It was only the beginning. This account is still under active investigation. If you have information about similar events in your region, unexplained contacts, or know individuals who may have been selected for integration programs, please leave your comments below. The story of humanity and its place in the cosmos is just beginning to be written. Subscribe for more cases of cosmic true crime, and don't forget to hit the notification bell. The truth is out there, and slowly it's coming home. What do you think? Are we truly alone in the universe? Or are we part of something much bigger than we ever imagined? Let me know your theories in the comments. The story continues.